This video is brought to you by Skillshare. More on them later in the video. For the past few weeks, I've been watching a ton of how to be a better reader videos, specifically the type of videos that talk about trying to get the number of books you read in a year up, and how to read those faster and how to get more out of them. And admittedly, I didn't really like any of them fully. There is good advice sprinkled throughout these videos. However, I think a majority of them do contain a lot of damaging information that can be really harmful when it comes to people trying to get into reading and who want to take that next step. The catalyst for this video actually came from a conversation that I had with another fellow booktuber named Drunzo, who you guys know as my friend Mark. And I told him that I wanted to make this giant, big, hour-long, expansive video breaking down how these videos are damaging and harmful. And he went, instead of that, why don't you just make a video giving your own advice that you think could help people? And that's what we're here now. This video is all about advice that I have experienced in the past that has helped me along on my reading journey, and it's advice that really means a lot to me to get out there because as a teacher, I saw all of my students at some point struggle with being a reader, and I just really want to help those who are like my students, who were like me back in the past a few years ago. So before I begin, I just want to issue a few caveats that I think need to be said before I actually begin talking about my advice. I know that literature is subjective and that these pieces of advice might not help you or might not help everybody out there, but I think they're general enough that there is something to take away from each of them that they can help somebody, or they can help somebody that you know who is struggling with being a reader. The second caveat that I want to give is that the first two pieces of reading advice are a little bit more nebulous in nature. They kind of talk about like reading culture and reading community a little bit more, so bear with me through those two. I think those are arguably as important as the later three pieces of reading advice because they help establish a foundation for when you're about to dive into reading. But with that being said, I think that's all the caveats that I want to give. Let's get on to the first step. When you're a new reader, I think arguably the most important thing you can do is establish goals because there is so much literature out there, arguably so much that if you really start to think about it, it's completely overwhelming. And if you're getting into reading, I think it's really important to establish what you're getting into reading for because reading is meant to be this fun, life-changing experience where you can dive into other worlds, perspectives, stories that you could never experience on your own. And if you're reading for pleasure, there are so many great, exciting, adventurous books out there that I think are arguably more exciting than movies, TV shows, music, anything. If you're reading for information, if you're reading to join a book club, to get ahead in your classes, to do anything, I really think it's important to establish what you're trying to do because it grounds you a little bit. Because if you don't, you're going to dive into this deep ocean of literature and it might be hard to kind of tread water for a while before you fully understand what direction you want to go. There are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of books for each specific niche that you can find in literature. And I promise you that identifying a direction you want to go with reading, whether it's you want to tackle solely nonfiction books, specifically maybe you want to just read about US presidents, or if you want to dive into lovely worlds of romance or horrific adventures and horror thrillers or anything, there is a real benefit to identifying which direction you want to go. And when you gain your footing, you'll find it far more accessible to dive into other things because you'll feel comfortable to fall back on what you know. And I think that's honestly amazing. Trying to get a footing through this grand scope of literature where we're all just kind of treading water is something that is really, really important. I also think that with reading culture as a whole, specifically with the rise of book talk, bookstagram, booktube, everything like that, there is this gamification of reading. You have to read as many books as possible throughout the year. You have to read 100 books, and you probably see a lot of booktubers, bookstagrammers, book talkers, I think is the name for it. I guess I'm technically a booktuber now, which is really weird to think, reading dozens upon dozens upon dozens of books. And while I think that is a really good thing to try to aspire to do, try not to get too overwhelmed by the large amount of literature that people are reading. The best way that I know how to quantify this is establishing reading goals with page lengths. And I know that sounds like I'm kind of going back on that with the gamification, but just bear with me for a second. I kind of want to prove a point through the amazing world of math, which I can't believe I'm actually about to use considering I was an English major and the last time I took a math course was in high school. So just bear with me. This monstrosity of a book, this monstrously long book, The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas, is 1,000 243 pages long. It is an unabridged version, so it contains every single piece of information that Alexander Dumas originally wrote with this book. If you're a new reader and you want to establish a reading goal of, let's go small, let's go 10 pages a day, you could read up to 3,650 pages in a year, considering the fact that you read every single day for 365 days. If you were to read for 10 pages a day, every single day, for an entire year, you would be able to read the entirety of the Count of Monte Cristo almost 3 times. However, I know that can kind of be a little bit hard to kind of quantify, so not only could you read the entirety of the Count of Monte Cristo 3 times, you could also read all of these books as well, along with the Count of Monte Cristo. This right here is about 3,650 pages. If you read 10 pages a day, I guess not including that book. If you read 10 pages a day, you will be able to read not only the Count of Monte Cristo, but all of these books as well. 10 pages a day can get you to read a ton of literature. But you might be thinking, Tyler, I can read more than 10 pages a day. That's pretty easy. Okay, I had that in mind. What if you read 30 pages a day? All right, bear with me. So if you read 30 pages a day, not only will you be able to read that entire stack of books that I just showed you, if you read 30 pages a day, you'll be able to read that entire stack. Plus, do you see all these books? If you read 30 pages a day, not only will you be able to read all of these books, you'll also be able to read all of the books I showed you in the previous 10 pages a day section too. That is an incredible number of books. If you showed me at the beginning of the year, Tyler, if you read 30 pages a day, you'd be able to get through all of these books that have been on my TBR for years, I would just slap you in the face and be like, there's no way that's gonna happen. But it's true. 30 pages a day gets you through all of these books. That is 10,950 pages. And if you ask, oh, how do you know off the top of your head? I don't. I was just hiding a little post-it note. That is currently, at this point in time, in August, more pages than I have read so far this year. That is incredible. You are at a faster rate reading than I am right now. But say, Tyler, you're still not convinced. Say you're like, oh, I can do 30 pages. Like, that's a piece of cake. I can really easily get through that. Okay, hold on one second. If you read 50 pages a day, you find the time to read an hour a day, you will read all of the books that I showed you previously and all of these. Do you see how many books there are in this? 50 pages a day will get you through every single book that I just showed you so far. That is a monumental amount of reading. I will not read 18,250 pages of books this year. That is insane. You are reading at an incredible pace. I'm not gonna lie, just moving out those books, I'm already really sweaty. That took a lot out of me. The point of that section was that when I started my reading journey, I looked at a mountain of literature, of untouched gems of storytelling masterpiece, and I was horrifically overwhelmed. I did not think I could ever get to that peak of the mountain. And what really happens with reading is that it's really easy to get caught up in the day-to-day aspect of reading. Oh, I only read 10 to 30 pages today. Oh, I only got an hour of reading in. And this mentality, I think, fails to see the large scope of reading you can get done if you maintain consistency. If you establish a goal for yourself as simple as 30 pages a day, will get you through a mind-numbingly large amount of books. 10, 30, 50 pages a day, while you're actually going through it, does not seem like a lot, but I promise you, you'll look back after a year and go, holy shit, I can't believe I made it through all those books. And honestly, looking at these stacks of books sitting next to me now, I can't believe that in a couple of years, I will have read these books. Because right now, I'm looking at this mountain of literature that I haven't tackled, and it makes me nervous, it makes me anxious, but I know if I maintain a goal for myself, 50 pages a day, 100 pages a day, God willing, that I can actually tackle all this stuff over time. And you can too, I promise it. I think it's super, super important to know that you will be able to accomplish this if you just establish a goal for yourself. Before we continue the video, I actually want to thank the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for anyone who loves learning and wants to explore their creativity and learn new life skills. Skillshare is perfect if you want to invest in yourself and your personal growth. If you have a specific skill you're trying to learn, Skillshare is the perfect place to start. From photography and illustration to graphic design, freelancing, and more, you can find classes that will match your goals and interests. I specifically love the classes like this video on how to be a better reader. There's really great sections dedicated to how to improve your reading ability, how to read a book better, how to dive into a book in a more analytical and thoughtful way. Your day-to-day is filled with tasks and endless to-do lists. Prioritize your self-care and wellness by using Skillshare as a way to invest in yourself, unwind, and relax. Classes like The Ultimate Self-Care Playbook by Jonathan Van Ness, Plants at Home by Plant Queen, and Writing for Self-Discovery will help you to recenter after a hectic week. Skillshare is ad-free, so you can stay in the zone while you're exploring new skills. It has new premium classes launched each week, so there's always something new to offer. The entire catalog of Skillshare is now available with subtitles in Spanish, French, Portuguese, and German. I know for me personally with video content creating, I have absolutely zero experience whatsoever video editing. I went to college for English and I went to grad school for education. I'm an English teacher. I have no idea what I'm doing. But Skillshare has this really great class in video editing with DaVinci Resolve, which is actually the program that I use to edit all of my videos by Oliver Astrolago. This course is super simple with very clear instructions on how to edit everything, and I'm using it here to make all of my videos behind the scenes as good as they possibly can be because I want to make the best content for you guys, but I can't do that without learning more, so I use Skillshare to learn how to use DaVinci Resolve. In this partnership with Skillshare, the first 1,000 people who go click on the link in the description down below will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and let's get back on how to be a better reader. For this next step, I don't really have a big showy stack of books I can slam down on my very fragile table that I got for cheap here and kind of stress about breaking it. But the thing with this step is it's kind of hard to explain as well. This step has to deal with kind of like the community of reading and reading culture as a whole. And it really comes down to this key kind of thing. Reading is an individual task. You can kind of be engaged with as many people as you want on social media. You can talk with hundreds upon thousands upon hundreds of thousands upon millions of people about, say, one specific book that you guys are all reading. But it's really important to know that after reading books with people, after sitting in communities and talking with people and engaging with literature and doing everything you can with everybody else, at the end of the day, it's still just you reading. Nobody else. You're sitting there on your couch, on your bed, on your chair, outside. It's just you. It's just you with the book. It's a really weird thing to talk about, but this really, really helped me a lot because I kept comparing myself to everybody else when I was reading. I was worried people were getting more out of it. I was worried people were reading more, reading faster, being better people than I was because they were reading more, forgetting the joy of the solitary aspect of reading. Every single book you read, you put your own experiences, your own self into the story. You understand it in a way that nobody else can because they don't have your reading experience. They don't have your life experience. It is important to just keep in mind that at the end of the day, you're reading for yourself. Don't read just to impress somebody else. Read to make yourself happier and yourself better, which ultimately comes down to the advice of read what makes you happy. If your sense of reading and joy is to read Star Wars fan fiction, do it. If you just want to read romance novels, do it. If you just want to read nonfiction books about the Silk Road, do it. Don't listen to what anybody else says. Do what makes you happy. Reading is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to enjoy all this. If you just want to read about the history of the creation of board games, I'm looking at my collection of board games right over there, do it. You will have support. You'll have support from me. I want you to read what makes you happy, but it's okay to sit back and go, I don't want to read a really boring story about some classic thing right now. That's okay. That's all right. Read what makes you happy. I really can't stress that enough. At the end of the day, it's just you. At this point in the video, I'm going to give a little more practical advice that I think could really help, but that is by far kind of my commentary on reading culture in the reading community. I love reading. I really do. And I love the joy that reading brings me, and I hope it brings you the same. But with that being said, let's get on to the actual really good practical advice. I think for me, when I get really lost in the book, I often forget about how steeped in historical context reading can actually be and how affected by real world events authors actually are. I mean, all you have to do is look at the 21st century to know that when a bunch of literature about this time comes out, you'll be pretty damn sure the author will be impacted by the global pandemic we went through, the political unrest we've gone through. It is a really interesting mindset that we have when we're stepping back into history. We're reading a book that was written in, say, the 1960s, the 1860s, the 1750s. I don't really know why I changed the date there. That our author is not impacted by the stuff going on in the world around them. And this advice is really just summed up in one word: research. Understand the context of the books that are going on. I know that the prospect of doing something that sounds like you're doing homework, especially if you're not in school or where you're right now on probably your summer break, it can be really unappealing, and I completely understand that, but I really do think it will help you understand the book a little bit more. Also, what's really great about specific publications is they will have footnotes that lead you to a back section, and I always recommend, if you're reading a book from Penguin Classics, to read the introduction, because it will usually place you in the mindset of what the author is writing, as well as the notes at the end will give you information about what's happening at the time. So I would always recommend to do some research about the author, about the time period, even just a little bit. Get the key ideas going, because it will help you understand the book. It will help you understand the context. I think that's just a really important thing, and it sucks that we've associated so much with school. Speaking of school, there was this video that I made on my channel called How to Be a Better Reader, a response video, and the video was by Mark Manson, and I've made it pretty known that I don't like that video a lot, and it really stemmed from one thing that Mark Manson said, where he's like, don't annotate your actual stuff because, well, it reminds you of school. And I made that video, and I was like, yeah, fuck this guy sucks. And then I actually went and looked at that video again, and not only has his video title changed on accordance with criticisms that I made in the video, but I wanted to actually give my own advice about about annotating and note-taking and stuff like that. I think you should annotate and highlight and mark up your book as much as possible. I'm throwing that out there. I don't think it's school. I don't think it's something that should be associated with school, and I hate Mark Manson for that advice. If you are someone like me who likes to buy books, books are a blank canvas. You should mark them up. A couple comments on my channel have asked me about how I annotate or how I note take with my books, and I want to give it right now because I don't think I could ever make enough about that topic to make a separate video. I just highlight passages that seem interesting, and I just write notes that I think are interesting or observations I have, and then I just put those little doggy marks there with the little note tabs whenever I find a passage that's interesting. There's no rhyme or reason to it. My books are a canvas to me. They're a blank sheet where I can write and annotate and do whatever I want to them. I was reading this book, Naomi, by Junichiro Tanizaki, I think is how you say it. And there was a section here that I literally just underlined and wrote the word cuck. I don't really know why I wrote that. I gotta be honest. It kind of just popped in my mind when I was reading that section. And I kind of want to remember this when I go back and take a look at this book again. It is okay to mark up your books. It is okay to have nothing with your annotations. If you just underline passages that you like, that's fine. If you just put those little markings in pages that you think you want to go back and read, that's fine. Books are meant to be written on. They're meant to be torn out. The pages are meant to be ripped out. The pages are meant to do whatever you want with them. They're art. They're yours. Don't do that to like a library copy, because as a former librarian, I will hunt you down and I will punch you in the left ear. Just keep that in mind. Just the left one. You know, maybe I'll come back for the right one. Who knows? But don't do that with library books or books you're taking from friends or books you're checking out because other people need them. But if you go out and buy a book, especially like a used book where you get it for a lot cheaper, destroy that thing. Tear it up, write on it, doesn't matter, it's your book. Annotate, note-take, destroy it, rip out pages. Pull a Robin Williams from Dead Poets Society where you rip out the stuff that's bullshit. Do whatever you want with it. It's not school. School is when you do that and then your entire worth is assigned to a letter grade. That's fucking bullshit. I'm gonna throw that out there. As a teacher, bullshit, stupid, it does not matter. Reading on your own for pleasure is meant to not be school. Read at your own pace. Read on the toilet. Read while you're eating breakfast. Annotate. Do whatever. Put an audiobook on in the shower. It does not matter. Just do what you can to make this enjoyable. And if your form of enjoyment is to transcribe your stuff onto a separate piece of paper, do it. Do what makes you happy. Find the skills and practices that work for you. These, like annotating and note-taking and everything, work for me. They might not work for you. but you'll find something, I promise. But don't be scared to try new stuff. Don't be scared to rip out a page and paste it on your wall and then just do whatever you want with it. It's okay. Reading does not have to be this like so clear and cut and like, I hate to say the word pretentious thing, but like shit, like I don't fucking care. Like look, here's Tales from a Jazz Age. It doesn't matter. Do what you want with the book. It's okay. I promise. In fear of making this video too long, I'm going to summarize this real quick. The best way to get better at reading is to just read more. That's it. That's all I can do to give you for advice. And that is arguably the most important advice because as cliche as it sounds, reading is a muscle. When I first started running again to train for a half marathon, I could barely run a mile without breaking a sweat, nearly pooping myself, and wanting to die on the roads here in California. But now, after training day in, day in out, I can almost get to that half marathon thing. It's the same with reading. The only way to get better at reading is to read more, to take challenges, to struggle, to sweat, to do everything, to just read more. If you want to tackle these giant monstrosities of books that I have over here, the only way you can do it is to actually read it. Reading is a muscle to practice and work out. Read more difficult books. Read books that are easier for you. Anything. Just keep practicing. Because after a few years, all of a sudden you'll look back and you'll go, what was I even worried about? And then you'll look down again and you realize you're halfway up that giant mountain that seemed so ominous and overbearing just a few years ago. I wish there was this giant, amazing tactic that I can give you that would make you this like beginner reader to this amazing skilled reader, known and recognized around the cosmos by everybody as the most skilled reader, but I can't. And anybody who is at that level has read thousands upon thousands of books, who has tackled as much as they could, who has dove into the hardest recesses of literature. The only way to get better at reading is to practice. And that's it. And that's the end of the reading advice video. I see so many tips in these videos that I just didn't like, and I wanted to just kind of like condense it into advice that I think is honest and true. I want to thank the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. You can find everything you need to know in the description down below. If you haven't already, go check out my two friends, Matt's Bookshelf and Drunzo. Matt's Bookshelf has his amazing book that has come out, so a link to that will be in the description down below. I also have a Patreon you can join if you feel like supporting the channel. The Patreon just gives you access to a Discord, in a community Discord. We can talk about literature and I can say hi and stuff like that, and we can chat and talk about books because I didn't want you guys to break your bank to ever support this channel. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. There'll be a couple more out in August. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and I'll see you again soon.